I saw the Warcraft movie, and for those wondering, I'll say it right up front. It's not complete shit. It's also not really good, but it's not a completely awful, embarrassing video game movie that we've seen numerous times in the past. If I had to describe it, it's fine, inoffensive, not good, it was fine. And that's the most the most positive things I could really say about the Warcraft movie. It really isn't the worst thing in the world, which is weird because the critics are really panning it really bad right now. I think last I saw on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 1% less than Pixels. And that's a goddamn insult because this movie is certainly better than Pixels. So is shitting in my hand, but whatever. The Warcraft movie, it's alright. The best things they did with this property is they actually handled Warcraft, the lore, the property, the characters, and etc. pretty well. So I don't know how deep into the Warcraft lore you are. To kind of give my history, I didn't really play Warcraft 1 all that much. Played a lot of Warcraft 2, loved the hell out of Warcraft 3, and I played World of Warcraft from its launch day up until about 2 months after Wrath of the Lich King. So I don't play as much anymore, but I know enough about the Warcraft history and lore that I knew most of it going into it. I'm not like a history expert or a buff on the lore compared to some people, but I know enough. That being said, the lore they did for way back in, pretty much the Warcraft 1, the first war, done really well. Not a whole lot of changes were made, and the few changes that they did make were either understandable, and then just a handful of them were actually better than what happened originally, I think. I won't go into too much spoiler territory, but yeah, for the most part, the way they did the lore was actually handled really well. And again, there's nothing in this movie that will make you angry, because I think a lot of other bad movies at some point have something in there that just pisses you off. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. That's the worst. You freaking serious? This movie doesn't have that. And that's what I mean when I say that it's inoffensive. Nothing's going to make you so pissed off and angry that you go up and tweet about it right away or write angry blog posts or what have you. So nothing will make you angry, you know, and that's more you can say for most nerd movies. Like, say, Dragon Ball Evolution. Like, that whole movie is just a rage fit. So nothing in this movie will make you angry. The CG in it is awesome. I mean, you can probably tell by the trailer, but the computer-generated graphics really are super good. Especially on the orcs themselves, with the two main, I say two, with especially all the main character orcs. Duratan, Orgrim, Gul'dan, like they look really freaking cool. In fact, all the CG was so good, I thought that the human actors were out of place. I would prefer it if they just got rid of the human actors and made the whole damn thing a CG movie, because Blizzard has always had incredible CG movies, really ever since Warcraft 3. That was like the first time that really started blowing my mind. So I would have preferred it if they just didn't have human actors and just went all CG, because again, the CG stuff was done really cool, especially the magic. Magic looked awesome. And you don't really see that a whole lot in movies these days. That's high fantasy magic. They always tried to, I feel like they tried to kind of mute its powers so it doesn't seem like overly over the top or overpowered compared to anything else, but not in this movie. Like there's fireballs, there's teleportations, there's lightning, there's a lot of really cool stuff. So again, CG fantastic, made the lightning look awesome. They also used the CG to do kind of a few cute moments, just to kind of remind you it's a Warcraft game. Like the camera would pan way out from the sky, and you're looking down the encampment, and it looks like you can see a bunch of orcs like working on the lumber and inside the village and all that. And that was just a moment where I was just kind of like, haha, I get it. CG was great. Magic looked awesome. The orcs looked awesome, especially the facial expressions. Between the facial motion capture and the skin textures and making their eyes look like they're filled with life instead of being dull and lifeless, because that happens a lot in CG. Not here. Orcs really good. They had a few. I kind of mentioned earlier with the like panning out and showing like all the orcs working. They did have a few fan servicey moments. If you've played the Warcraft games or you kept up on the MMO or whatever, I was like, that's just for you guys. That's an example of one. You can see a Murloc at some point and hear him go. So that's just another moment of going hee hee hee, yay. And there's a couple other moments in there that I'm not going to spoil because some of them are actually pretty funny and I don't want to ruin that for you. So I would say those are the best parts. They handled the property extremely well. The CG was really, really good. The orcs were done really, really well, and they kept enough fan servicey moments for the fans that it didn't like stand out and like kind of take you out of the movie, because that happens a lot when they really try to throw in visual gags or whatever for fans. And this one doesn't really do that. It doesn't try to go too hard into that. It's just very politely peppered throughout, where if you hear it or see it or notice it, that you'll enjoy it. Those were the good things. Things I didn't like were a lot of everything else. The first 30 minutes of the movie is terrible. It's not good. So they have so much to set up within this movie and so many locations to be at, and throughout the entire movie, you don't sit yourself at any scene or any location for more than, say, 90 seconds to maybe 2 minutes before you're suddenly somewhere else. You're all over the place, and it's especially bad in the first 30 minutes because that you probably have a new location every 20-25 seconds. It's really, really bad. I mean, it starts off with Duratan and his wife Draka, and they're in their camp, and suddenly we're in Stormwind, and then suddenly we're in Ironforge, which, by the way, did you see Ironforge in the trailer? Yeah, it looked awesome. That's the only time it shows up. Just here. 30 seconds. Alright, now suddenly we're back in Stormwind. Oh crap, now we're in Goldshire. Okay, now we're at Medivh's Tower. It's really that fast and all over the place. And even as someone who knows these places and knows what's going on, I had a hard time keeping up because it was so ADHD, constantly jumping between places to the point where characters, being magic users, literally teleport from location to location. It's all over the place, and it jostles your mind, and it's hard to keep up on it. And it really is the worst at the first 30 minutes. It gets better as the movie goes on, but it's still a lot of location jumping because there are essentially two movies happening. The orcs and the humans. And the orcs were better than the humans, quite frankly, when it comes to which characters you actually cared about. And that was another issue I had with this movie, was that there was no single defined main character, or even like a small group of main characters. It was like the movie was trying to say, they're all main characters, and it made it impossible to really focus or care about any one of them. Again, the Orc brothers were done the best, Duratan and Orgrim, especially Duratan. He really was done the best. And then on the human side, it's constantly jumping between Lothar's important. No, not really. Khadgar's important. Not really. Gunora is important. I almost forgot her name. No, wait, Medivh is important, and it's all over the place. And because of that, it made it hard to really develop any one of the characters, or really focus on them, or really connect with any of them. And that was another thing the movie didn't have, is that it did not have a sort of a proxy character, a fish out of water within this story, so that as the movie or characters explain things to this proxy character, people watching in the audience can also learn about what's going on. Movie does not do that at all. It just kind of expects you to know, and nothing is really explained. In fact, there are a lot of moments where you just have to accept things are there, or they just move on without really explaining why certain things happen. For example, Gunora. She's the half-orc, half-Draenei, who looks like a human, but she's not human. She's half-Draenei. And she ends up joining the human side. But it's not really very thoroughly explained why she does. She just kind of she just ends up on the human side, and I would have really liked to see a little more struggle or justification or reasoning for her to end up joining the human side. She just kind of does. And then again, if you know the Warcraft lore, more stuff happens with her, especially towards the end. But again, that was one of the things I liked, that smaller change. That was one of the smaller changes I was actually okay with. Also within the first 30 minutes, again, because there's so much to set up, all of the expositional dialogue, which there was plenty of, was really, really clunky. And it does that really, really bad writing trope where even though a character kind of knows who they're talking to, they still have the need to say their name and state their purpose for their own sake. Like, oh, and what would Duratan, the great orc war chief, know about anything? It's like, all right, got it, okay. Could have done that a little smoother. Or, oh, it's you, Lothar. Just very, very plainly, like it states it so obvious because it assumes most of its audience is completely ignorant, and for the most part, they probably will be. But there really are better and smoother ways to do that, and they just really didn't have that with this movie. And again, that's something a proxy character really could have helped with. They could have introduced themselves to this character and thus to the audience. Just another small thing that could have happened. You figure Gonora would be a great proxy character since, you know, she was with the orcs for the longest time, and then she ends up on the human side, and the human can explain their way of life and stuff to her. Doesn't happen at all. Which, that was another problem I had with how much the locations jumped around it all, is that we really couldn't absorb how the humans lived in this world. We just know that they do, and they have Stormwind, and they have Ironforge, and like they're huge sprawling cities, and we'll fly over them on the back of a griffin, but at no point do we kind of go down into the streets and see if people are happy, if things are clean and well done, or it's a dirty and gritty and it's hard for people to live, because they talk about how they had peace for many years before these orcs showed up, but we don't really see anyone living peacefully, so you really don't have a moment to get yourself invested in this world, regardless if you know it or not. And yeah, that's just another thing they could have had if they just weren't jumping around on locations a whole lot. Now, I talked a lot about how the orcs are better than the humans, and I mean that a couple of ways. Just in terms of their stories, Duratan has a much more interesting story and arcs going on with him than, say, the human sides with Lothar. Now, the other thing I mean by that is that the humans are terrible actors. They were not very good, and it really bothered me throughout the whole movie, because the voice actors for the orcs were done extremely well. Like, whatever audio engineering they did for the games, they did the exact same thing for the movie, so it sounded awesome, and they really did emote, and you could hear it and feel it within their voices and in their eyes and whatever. It was really, really well done. Whereas the human characters were either extremely flat or tried to force themselves to be cooler than they are. I'll explain that in a minute. The Gonora, that actress, was not very good. Because she was supposed to be, you know, again, an orc. Might as well be an orc out of water, but it just, all of her dialogue was just kind of, I didn't feel it. She just kind of knows English, and when they ask her, how do you speak our tongue? She just says, from the slaves. And it's like, oh, okay. But she speaks it so well, and you really don't hear or feel the orc side of her come out at all. So it's just she ends up being like a very, very flat delivery on a lot of things she's doing. Even when there are laugh lines, the few laugh lines that she has, it kind of works in those instances just because it's very straight-faced. But other than that, I really was not getting the emotion from her in her delivery at all. She emoted it at times when she didn't have to speak at all. You could see it almost forcefully at times. But when she spoke, it wasn't there. The character I liked the least was Lothar. Lothar is the main human dude. He's in all of the trailers. He's on the posters with Duratan. He's the dude you always see flying around on a griffin. I don't know anything about this actor, but he was not very good. So I don't know anything about him. I don't know where he's from, but he clearly had some kind of accent, a very thick accent that he could not get rid of throughout this entire movie. And what bothered me about that is an accent is fine, but it made his character sound so vastly different and out of place compared to every other human who was from Stormwind. Because everyone from Stormwind had a vaguely British accent, except for I think Khadgar. I think Khadgar is a straight American. So he just sounded out of place, like a kind of a man, I don't know. I want to say Irish, but again, I have no idea. So when he does a lot of his deliveries, it's not just we'll have to go there and defeat the orcs. It kind of comes off as like we'll have to go there and defeat the orcs. Just it's weird. It's weird just because he's the only one that does that. And he was a character who, either from the script or his acting, they tried so hard to make him this snarky, cocky character that people would think is cool, but man, it just does not work. Almost to the point where it's really obnoxious. When you see this movie, count how many times in your head Lothar does this little headcock thing. Because he does it all the time. Where if he says a line to someone, he's really proud of himself. He'd be like, for example, from the trailers, they're bigger than you. Fight smarter. And he just does this little headcock, like kind of self-assured, like, yeah, got him. And he does it a lot. Whether it's says a line, headcock, murder, orc, fight, stab an orc, headcock. Oh, big bad orc who's gonna defeat us all. I'll take him down in a single swing. Headcock. It's there all the time. There's also one part, which I won't go into spoilers, where he's fighting a large creature thing. And it was very Pirates of the Caribbean-ish. So I think they kind of wanted like a Jack Sparrow-esque cocky, kooky character or whatever that people would really think was enjoyable or hilarious, and it doesn't work. Especially since in a lot of very high-tension moments, like we're at the climax of the movie where all the shit's going down. Things are really, really bad. And this dude is still being cocky, still being snarky, doing a little head thing and making jokes. And it just didn't fit. Like, that tonal shift just wasn't there, especially for how seriously the movie carries itself going into this final climactic battle, and he is still having a good time. It didn't work for me at all. I, again, don't know anything about the actor or whatever, but I really didn't like him. Especially if, at any point in time, when the camera is zoomed in on his face, like real close, no matter what the context of the scene is, doesn't matter whatever that's going on, that dude looks like he's just on the verge of breaking into tears. And I don't know why. At some points in the movie, it makes sense because something bad and or sad has happened. Other times, when he's supposed to be like badass and cocky and taking things out, he still looks like he's just real close to crying. Like you just constantly see the water in his eyes, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it was an actor choice, or they just told him to look almost sad all the time, or maybe he was having an allergic reaction to something. But that's another thing you'll notice. He looks like he's ready to just burst into tears at any given moment. Just one trigger word away from just full on. Yeah, it's coming. That's another thing that kind of bothered me about him. More annoying than him was Lothar's son. Lothar's son is a character who shows up probably like 45% of the way through the movie. It just says, oh, the whatever barracks has been taken over. The only survivor was your son. And he's like, "Buh," and he runs over there, and his son's like laying in bed. He's like, I'm so injured, and he has like a single scratch on his head. He's like, everything is bad. One of those weird is that Lothar, not that old of a guy. His son, not that young of a kid. So it was kind of a weird. I didn't quite buy the father-son relationship there, because frankly, Lothar didn't look old enough, and or his son didn't look young enough. I don't even remember the name of his son. That should tell you anything about the movie and how well it explains the stuff. Anyway, so his character, the son character, basically shows up for the dramatic plot device-y stuff, which again, without going into spoilers, because I really don't want to spoil anything for you, but The son shows up, and then something happens with the son character immediately afterwards, and you're just kind of like, oh, shocker. You know? Okay, yeah. No, won't spoil it. But you can kind of see it coming a mile away, and it's just another way of them trying to be like, oh no, dramatic, everything sucks, or whatever. Now, I did mention the magic earlier, just because it's kind of related to that scene with the son. All the fighting in the movie was kind of unmemorable to me. Like, I actually don't remember much of it. Like, a lot of the sword fights weren't great. Sorry, my battery died. So as I was saying, end of the day, the movie is just okay. As a Warcraft fan, it's inoffensive. In terms of it being a good movie, it really isn't, but it's not bad, it's not awful, it's not garbage, it's not shit. You can see it once and basically be okay with it. It's not really a movie you want to see multiple times to kind of re-experience certain highlights throughout the film or anything. It's fine for what it is. Not fantastic, not terrible, it's fine. Now if they do another movie, which I hope they do, one, spend more time on things, which there's supposed to be a director's cut of the original Warcraft film, because I heard from Blizzard employees saying they had to remove like 40-45 minutes from the movie, which if they add that all back in, I think that could help a lot. It would make the movie extremely long, but a lot of places and a lot of things happening just needed more time to really sink in and just not be so fast-paced with location hopping. And I think that could help a lot. So I will watch the movie again with the director's cut with all the extra stuff added in, because I do want to see what they took out. Now, if they make a sequel, which the movie already killed it in China, so I would say probably slow things down. Maybe just pick one character to kind of focus on. My vote would be Thrall, unless you want to go to Warcraft 2 first before you do Warcraft 3. If you do that, just focus on Khadgar. Just Khadgar, because Khadgar has an awesome storyline throughout all of Warcraft, really. Anyway, that's enough for me. If you've seen the Warcraft movie, please let me know what you thought too, or if you loved it or whatever. I know a lot of other people who saw the movie already have really, really enjoyed it. Again, I think it's okay. It was certainly Warcraft. Don't think it was a great movie. Don't think it was a bad movie. I'm just straight middle of the line. If I had to put a number score on it, which I normally don't because I'm not an avid movie watcher, I would give it a 5 out of 10. It was fine. It was fine.